So those of you who came to the last Saturday that we had 2 weeks ago, we started looking at this topic of how to transform problems, and I explained some methods we can use to do this. And I wonder, did any of you try these out since last time, the last 2 weeks? Did any of you try out any of these methods when you faced a problem in your life? You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I quite a lot practice Tonglen, even for 1, 2 or 3 breaths.
Yeah.
And it's really, really helpful. Yeah. I think in my thoughts, it's really a way to develop. Because we have problems, and we can either suffer from them or maybe just open our heart for others who suffer like us or more than us. And then we can really transform our heart.
Yeah, once you learn how to do this, it doesn't take much time. You can do it just within a minute or 2 minutes. So I know everyone is busy, doesn't have a whole lot of free time. So in the beginning, it takes some time to learn these kind of methods. But once you learn them, then they don't have to take so much time, and you can use them in your daily life when you face problems. The tricky thing is remembering to do them, remembering to use them when you have problems. But the thing is, it's such a nicer way of dealing with problems as opposed to our usual way, which is to get upset and then, unhappy and maybe angry and blaming and so on and so forth. So if you've been through that kind of experience, then and you can recognize that that's not a very nice way to deal with things. Just get more upset rather than feeling better. So if you can see that the usual way isn't very nice, and then these other ways are much nicer, much more comfortable and pleasant for yourself and also for others, because then you're not getting all upset and making problems for others. So if you can recognize that, then you'll want to do them. You'll want to use them more and more. So that's one thing that's very helpful, is just to recognize that the usual reactions, which are like getting angry and impatient and so on, that those are really not very helpful. And last time I mentioned the Buddha, in one of his sutras, he used the analogy of arrows. Do you remember that? He said, like, having a problem is like being struck with an arrow. Sorry. And that's bad enough. That's already painful. But then if we get angry, upset, impatient, blame and so on, that's like shooting more arrows at ourselves. So it just doubles the pain or triples the pain rather than relieving the pain. So if you can recognize that, if you can see that in your own experience, that doesn't help. That doesn't make things better. Then you'll probably be interested in learning some other ways. So that's the basic idea of this subject. Learning how to deal with problems, because problems are inevitable. We can't go through life without experiencing them. Everybody has them, even billionaires and celebrities and people who are up at the top. They have problems too. So it's no use feeling envious, jealous of other people and think, oh, if only I were like them, if I had a life like them, then everything would be fine. That's not true. They have problems too. Nobody's immune to problems, so we all have problems. So since they are inevitable, they are unavoidable, they happen to us, then it's good to learn how we can utilize them so that they don't cause more suffering in our lives, and instead they can help us get closer to enlightenment. So that's like a really wonderful thing. We can actually use problems and suffering in our path, and in that way create the causes for enlightenment, get closer to enlightenment. But it's up to each one of us to do that. But it's good to at least recognize that we do have a choice. You know, sometimes it seems like there's no choice. There's only one way to go, only one road to go on, and that's the anger road, the unhappy road, the negative reaction. So that may sometimes seem like the only way there is, but that's not true. There are other roads we can travel, other paths we can go down. So it's important to realize we do have a choice. Just for me, that realization was really important at one point in time. I was during a period of time feeling a lot of anger. It was just coming up from inside of me, and it wasn't towards any particular person. It was just this raw, primal kind of anger. And I was trying all these different methods for dealing with anger, and some of them worked and some of them didn't. But then one day I remember sitting there and trying to work on my anger, and it was like a light bulb going off in my mind. The realization that I have a choice. I have a choice about what I do with this feeling of anger. I can go along with it, or I can say, no, I don't want to go along with it. I don't want to follow it. So for me at that moment, it was like a revelation, like an insight, that there's a choice. Does that make sense? Because sometimes we think there isn't a choice. And probably many people in the world think that way. They have no choice but to just go along with whatever happens in their mind, whatever thought pops up, whatever feeling, emotion, impulse, they just have to go along with it. So it's wonderful, it's liberating to realize that we have a choice. We don't have to go along with everything that goes on in our mind.
And what about anxiety? When people describe it as it pops up without any control, without any previous
Anxiety, yeah.
So how can I, that's not use it about anxiety, that you can choose not to go that way?
Well, there are things that can be done. I mean, I guess there's different kinds of anxiety. Like I hear people talk about panic attacks, and I don't know what that's like. I haven't had that experience, but it sounds pretty awful. So, I mean, if it's that bad, then I don't know, there may be some physiological basis to it, and you might need to get help from a doctor or a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist or whatever. So if it's really strong anxiety of that nature, you may not be able to work on it on your own. But there are things that you can do on your own. There's a really interesting book called Buddha's Brain. Has anyone heard of that book? Buddha's Brain? It's a great book. It's written by a man named Rick Hansen, who's an American, he's a neuropsychologist, and he's also a meditator. He practices meditation and he also teaches meditation. So he has quite a good knowledge of both areas. And so the book is kind of like an explanation of the brain from the point of view of Buddhism, or Buddhism from the point of view of the brain. It's like he's combining those two things. And it's written in a very humorous and light and easy to understand way. Even I can get something out of it. Usually when it comes to explanations about the brain, I just go, goes in one area and out the other. But he explains it in a really nice way. And there's one section in that book, it's called Feeling Safer. And it's all about fear, how to deal with fear. And if you're interested, you can give me your email address and I'll email it to you because I extracted it from the book. But he mentions a few methods in there that you can use when feeling afraid. I mean, one simple thing is breathing, deep breathing, taking deep breaths and exhaling slowly. Because it's found physiologically that long, slow exhalation of breath activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the relax, as opposed to the, what do they call it, the fight and flight, the sympathetic nervous system, the fight and flight mode. So deep breathing, especially the exhalation, slow exhalation, helps to shift our body to the parasympathetic nervous system. So naturally we feel more relaxed. And I actually tried that when I was here 2 years ago, and I had to drive. And I hadn't been driving for many, many, many years. Driving in traffic here was really, sometimes I really felt like I was about to have a panic attack. All these really aggressive drivers coming right up behind me, and so I tried this, because I can't, meditate when I'm driving. So I just did this very deep breathing, and it definitely helped. It really helped me to calm down and manage. So that's one method you can do anytime, just a few deep breaths. Another one that he mentioned that I can remember is invoking protectors. And this could be, if you're religious, it could be some religious figure. Like in Buddhism, we have Buddha, we have Tara, we have, different deities. Tara especially, she's said to be the one who comes to your rescue whenever you need help. And she's a woman, a female, so you can really feel connected. So if you have a connection with some spiritual figure, Buddhist or Christian or whatever, you could think of that. But he said you could also just think of some person, like your grandmother or, someone someone in your life who you feel gives you, kind of soothes you, helps you to feel safer and more protected. So just think of that person, imagine that person present with you. So that's very similar to the Buddhist idea of taking refuge in some being, Buddha or whatever, that we feel is present with us and giving us support, giving us protection. And then another method, which is, I won't go into it here because it's a bit long, but that is to actually face the fear, to look at it and analyze it and, what is it, what am I afraid of? And is there a valid reason to be afraid? Is there really something there to be afraid of? And then you go through a whole process of analyzing that. So
like analytic meditation?
Yeah, this is something I came to myself when I first time I ever had to give a talk. long ago. I was a new nun and very young, very shy, staying at Kopan Monastery, and I was asked to give a Dharma talk. Just a small group of people, less than 10. And I said, yes, I wanted to do it. But as the time got closer, I became more and more nervous because I'm normally very shy and I don't like talking in front of people. So I was just feeling more and more frightened of this. So one day I just sat down and looked at that and asked myself, what am I afraid of? Why am I feeling this way? And I could see that my mind was fantasizing the worst case scenarios, like I'll get in front of these people and then freeze. My mind will go blank. I won't think of anything to say. Or I might say something, but it'll be really stupid. Mumbled and make a fool of myself, look stupid in front of all these people. And then they will, think, oh, what an idiot she is, and then even throw things at me. So this is what my mind was doing. It was just fabricating these horrible things that would happen. So when I looked at that, and then I asked myself, is it definite that those things are going to happen? And I realized, no, not necessarily. And then I asked myself, is there anything I can do to try to prevent those things from happening? And I realized, yes, there are some things that I can do. I can think beforehand of what I want to say, and I can write it down, write some notes for myself, so then I can look at my notes and remember what it is I want to say, and then I won't, make a fool of myself. And then I also realized that even if I didn't give such a great talk, people are usually kind. And they probably wouldn't, boo and hiss and throw things at me. They probably think, oh, this poor little nun, she's so shy, and they'd be very kind and sweet to me. So that exercise just made me see how the mind works, how when we have fear, the mind just fabricates, creates, all these horrible things. And then we tend to just believe, yeah, that's really going to happen. Isn't that terrible? So that just makes us more afraid. But when we face the fear and we look at it realistically, then we might realize that, no, it's not definite that those things will happen. And even if they do happen, well, it's not the end of the world. Even if I do a lousy talk, so what? It doesn't mean I have to go and jump off a roof. At the end of my life, you go on. You can carry on, try again. So anyway, that's a really helpful method for dealing with fear. There's some other things in the book as well. So like I say, during the break you can give me your email address and anyone else who's interested in it as well, and I can email that to you.
Maybe you can send it to Tal or Shuki, and then we send it to
Yeah,
us.
I can send it to everyone if you
Okay.
send it to me.
Yeah, and then you also will
What
also...
about meditating on impermanence? Because fear or any disturbing emotion is impermanent.
Fear, yes, fear is impermanent, yeah. So that's another thing you can do. You can just see that it's a state of mind. It's not there forever, comes and goes. So, now it's there, but later it will go. Like, actually this morning, I was feeling really, really afraid, and I don't know why. It was just this, it started yesterday actually, I don't know why. But it's gone. After lunch, after I had a good lunch, it was gone. Maybe it just needed to be grounded. So it comes and goes. So that's another thing that's helpful to... Buddhism would say it could be karma. The things that come up in our mind are related to experiences we had before, maybe from childhood, maybe from past lives. So when strange things come up in our mind and we don't know why, where does this come from, It could be just some previous experience. And we don't necessarily have to go and dig it out, what was that, what happened there, But just think, oh yeah, I've had fear before, and so this is just like remembering that experience. So you don't have to take it too seriously. So what I'm saying here is, if the fear isn't too intense or too severe, and you can deal with it on your own, but if it is severe, if it's like PTSD or panic attacks, you may not be able to deal with it on your own. You might need help from somebody else. Okay, so last time we were going through this handout with a number of methods. We did some of them, so today we'll finish the ones we didn't do last time. So if you have your handout, or if you don't, you can look over the shoulder of the person next to you. We're on page 2. Point number 5, some methods for transforming problems. And these are mainly from this book by Lama Zopa Rinpoche called Transforming Problems into Happiness. So if you're really interested in this topic, you could try to get a copy of that book. So here I've just sort of extracted and synthesized these methods. Okay, so the first one, letter A, is renunciation. So renunciation is the attitude that says, I want to get out of suffering. I want to be free of suffering. But it's more than just that, because everybody feels that way. Everybody wants to be free of suffering. But in Buddhism, renunciation has to do with understanding that the situation we are in, I was looking for the wheel of life, but I don't see it here. You may have seen this painting or drawing called the Wheel of Life. It's used in the Tibetan tradition to illustrate what we call samsara, or cyclic existence.
Nine.
Sorry?
We saw it in module 9.
Yeah, we studied it.
Yeah, okay. So when you visit Tibetan temples and monasteries, it's usually painted on the wall when you're first walking in. So it's quite a interesting, colorful, detailed drawing. Anyway, so that's used to illustrate samsara, but samsara is really more of a psychological situation rather than a physical situation. It's as long as we are not enlightened, as long as we haven't attained nirvana, liberation, our mind is still kind of trapped in karma and delusions. So delusions are states of mind that are faulty, incorrect, deluded, and they're the main cause of suffering, main cause of problems. So the three main ones are greed, hatred, and ignorance. So greed is, I want more and more and more, never satisfied. It's also called attachment because we become very attached to or possessive of people and things, and we want them to be there forever. But that's impossible because all these things are impermanent, and we are impermanent. So that's one of the main disturbing emotions or delusions. And then there's anger, hatred. That's when we have strong aversion, antagonism towards people or things or our own self or whatever. And that can lead us to engage in violent, aggressive actions, harmful actions. Even if we don't act it out, it's still very disturbing inside, right? Our mind goes crazy when we're angry. So it's a very disturbing state of mind. And then ignorance. Ignorance is actually the chief, the number one disturbing state of mind. It's not seeing truth, not seeing reality, seeing things in a mistaken way. It's like a veil that covers our mind, preventing us from seeing reality, things as they are, causing us to see things in mistaken ways. So that's the main one, the root of all our problems, all our suffering. So the point is, as long as our mind isn't free from these delusions or disturbing emotions, and not free from karma, doing actions and then having to experience the results of our actions, so it's as though we are trapped, like in prison. Like being in prison. Samsara is like being in prison, not free. So when you when you learn about this, you think about this, you come to accept this is true, this is the reality, then naturally you want to get out. It's like, any of us, if we're thrown into jail, thrown into prison, our immediate feeling is, I want out of here. I don't want to stay. This isn't where I want to be. I want to get out. So renunciation is like that. It's like the wish to get out of the prison of samsara or cyclic existence. So if you have some understanding of renunciation, you have some intellectual understanding, maybe you have some feeling for it, then when problems happen in our life, difficulties, suffering, problems happen in our life, we can use that situation to remind ourselves, this is samsara. I'm in samsara. It's like a prison. It's not a nice place to be. As long as I'm in samsara, I'm going to continue having problems like this again and again and again. Therefore, I must get myself out. So then problems become like a reminder of the need to get ourselves out of samsara. And to get out of samsara, we need to engage in certain practices, follow the path, which was taught by the Buddha. So we go back to module 9 and learn about, remind yourself of what you have to do to get out of samsara. But the main thing we need to do is to develop the wisdom realizing emptiness. That's the direct antidote to ignorance, which is the thing that keeps us in samsara. So as long as we have ignorance, we're stuck in samsara. If we can eliminate ignorance, we can get out, we can be free. So that's the main thing we need, is the wisdom, understanding emptiness, the true nature of things. With that, we can walk out. Doors open, we can walk out. That's great. But on top of that, we need other things as well. We need to live ethically. We need to develop our positive qualities, love and compassion, patience, and so forth. We need to develop our mind in meditation, be able to concentrate our mind. There's lots of other things we need as complementary practices to the wisdom, realizing emptiness. But anyway, we do have to have renunciation, which is the wish to get out, the wish to be free. So not everybody feels that way, even though we all suffer. And we do want to be free of suffering. But if we don't understand the causes of suffering, what it is that keeps us in a state of suffering, then we can't say we really have renunciation. That makes sense?
Yes. I would like to ask a question just to clarify for myself. When I say renunciation, it's not only that I want to get out, but I know the way to get out. Is it implemented inside?
Yes, why?
That I understand it, how to go out. Where is the way to go out also?
So are you saying, your question is, in order to have renunciation, do you also need to...
Understand the way to go out. Otherwise, is it renunciation?
Yeah. Renunciation does involve an understanding of samsara. So you do need to understand the structure of samsara.
And enlightenment? In a way, it is?
Not necessarily. Well, yeah, you don't have to have the wish to reach enlightenment, because in the Theravada tradition, the Hinayana, I mean, they know about enlightenment because the Buddha attained enlightenment, but their goal is not enlightenment or Buddha. Their goal is just to get out of samsara, to reach nirvana or liberation. So I think, yeah, to have renunciation, you do need to have an understanding of samsara and what it means to be in samsara, why we are in samsara. Because they say the real meaning of renunciation isn't just wanting to be free of suffering, but wanting to be free of the causes of suffering, especially ignorance. I mean, everybody, an animal wants to be free of suffering, right? If they're hungry, they want to be free of the suffering of hunger. But they don't understand what is the root cause of hunger and all the other problems they have. So we wouldn't call that renunciation. But your question is, do you actually have to understand the cause, what was it?
The way out.
The way out.
I'm renouncing samsara because I know the way out. Otherwise, if I renounce something and I don't know the way out, so...
I mean, that's a good question, because actually there are non-Buddhist systems, prior to the Buddha and after the Buddha. They also talk about nirvana, they also talk about liberation, and want to get out. They see that this world is suffering and they want to get out of this suffering. But their idea about how to get out, the way to get out, is different than the Buddhist idea. But I think we could still say they do have renunciation. They do have renunciation, but they don't know the right way out, according to Buddhism.
Yeah.
So maybe, you don't have to know the right way out in order to have renunciation. That's my guess. Okay, so then we need renunciation to be able to get out of samsara, to get out of suffering. And as long as we're captivated by the beautiful things, the pleasurable things of samsara, it's hard to have renunciation. Right? So when you're in the movies, you're in a movie theater watching this great movie and really enjoying yourself. At that moment, you probably don't have renunciation. It's hard to have renunciation. Or you go to a wonderful restaurant, or you're eating ice cream, you're on the beach with your friends, or whatever. So in those times when things are going well, it's difficult to have renunciation. But when problems happen in our life, bad things happen. You're in a traffic jam, you get sick, you have pain in your stomach, you lose your job, or your boss yells at you, or whatever. So when unpleasant things happen, those are opportunities to remind ourselves, samsara, I'm still in samsara, it's not great. I need to get out. So you can remember the need to free oneself from samsara and feel the determination. Another term for renunciation is the determination to be free. That's a nice term. It's kind of more positive. It's focusing more on where we want to get to rather than where we want to get away from. So freedom. I want to get to freedom. Yeah. So it's another way of talking about this state of mind. Is that clear?
Yes.
Number 2 is refuge. So refuge in Buddhism is the attitude we develop with regard to the Buddha and his teachings, what we call the 3 jewels. You know what the 3 jewels are? Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Yeah, so the Buddha is, of course, there's Shakyamuni Buddha, but there's many other Buddhas as well. A Buddha is anybody who has reached the highest state of mind possible, the state of enlightenment, free of everything that's negative, fully developed, and everything that's positive. So it's like a perfect state of mind. So there's lots of Buddhas. And then the Dharma are the teachings that Buddha gave, but more specifically, it's the realizations of those teachings. It's the actual transformation of your mind when you realize the teachings, when you realize emptiness, or you realize impermanence, or you realize the Four Noble Truths. So it's actual realizations of the teachings rather than just words. And the Sangha are those who are following the path, especially those who have realized emptiness directly, who are called Aryas. The term Arya, sometimes translated as noble one or superior. This is somebody who has attained a direct realization of emptiness. So they're not yet enlightened, but they've reached a very important milestone of the path. There's no coming back. After you reach that state, you don't fall back. You just keep going until you're enlightened. So they are the real Sangha, because they see truth, they see reality, they see things as they are, so they can be guides for us, real guides, to get ourselves out of confusion, out of delusion, out of suffering, and to liberation and enlightenment. So refuge is a state of mind that comes about when you realize you're not in a great situation, you're in a suffering situation, and you want to get out of this situation, you feel the need for help, and then you learn something about the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha enough that you feel they can help me, that you feel a sense of confidence, a sense of trust, that the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha can give me the help that I need to get out of suffering, out of samsara. So that's the meaning of refuge. So when people learn Buddhism and they get to a point where they feel this is the path that I want to follow, then they can request to take refuge from a teacher. So then you go through a ceremony where you kind of make a formal declaration of your wish to follow the path. They call that taking refuge. So then...
Geshe Tenzin Zopa gave refuge while he was here.
So it's good not to rush into that. It's good to take your time and really think carefully, is this what I want to do? Because it should be a lifetime commitment. like getting married, although not everybody stays married for the rest of their life. But it's kind of similar to you make this promise. I'm going to follow the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha for the rest of my life. So, but more than that ceremony, refuge is a state of mind. And they actually say, those of us who have taken refuge formally, we should renew it every day. So it should be part of our life. We should have a sense of, I am a follower of the Buddha. I'm trying to practice the Dharma to the best of my ability. I'm trying to live my life in a way that is in accordance with the Buddha's teachings. So it should be a state of mind that you have in your life, being a spiritual follower. So, so when problems happen, this can strengthen our refuge. Again, it's like a reminder, well, I'm in this bad situation. I'm not perfect. I'm not enlightened. I haven't reached nirvana or liberation. I'm in a state of suffering, and I need help to get out. And I'm thankful that I have found people or beings that can help me to get out, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So then it's like renewing, re-strengthening our attitude of refuge, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And then the third one is eliminating pride. We did look at this a little bit because it comes from this quotation of Shantideva. We looked earlier at a verse from Shantideva where he spoke about the good qualities of suffering. Remember that? Suffering has good qualities. There's good things about suffering. So one of the good things is it helps us to have less pride and more humility. I mean, he didn't say humility, but I'm saying that because humility and pride are like opposites. So pride is one of the delusions. It's one of the unwholesome, unskillful states of mind. It causes us to look down on people, sometimes even mistreat people who we think are inferior to us. So it can lead to some kind of ugly behavior. But it's also an obstacle on the spiritual path, because we have to recognize that we're not perfect. We have to recognize that we have a lot of faults. We have a long way to go to work on ourselves and get ourselves out of the situation we're in and to liberation. So we have to have humility. We have to have, the ability to acknowledge mistakes and faults and imperfections. So that requires a certain amount of humility, because if we have pride, then, we think, well, I'm great. I don't have anything to learn. I don't need to work on myself. We might even look down on teachers or people who know more than we do and could teach us a thing or two. Yeah? So if we have this habit of looking down on people, being critical of people, putting them down and so on, then even when we meet a teacher, we might have that same attitude coming up and look down on this teacher and think that this person doesn't have anything to teach me. They don't know anything. I know more than them. So we may have those kinds of attitudes coming up. And then that becomes like our mind just closes. We have a closed mind to that person. Did I mention last time this analogy that they say having pride is like being on the peak of a mountain? Having humility is like being... No, I didn't? Oh, that's a lovely one. So, yeah, this comes from the teachings. They say that having pride is like being on the peak of a mountain. Because at the very top of a mountain, we're talking about a really high mountain, it's barren. Yeah, it's just rock. It's just rock and snow. There's nothing growing up there. No greenery is growing. And then down below in the valley, lower down, you have lots of things growing. It's green, you have crops and plants and vegetables and fruits and so on. So they say pride is like being on the peak of the mountain. Humility is like being in the valley below. When the rain falls, it hits the peak of the mountain, but it doesn't stay there. It just rolls right down, collects in the valley below. And that's why at the top of the mountain you don't find anything growing, but down in the valley you have lots of things growing. It's very rich, very fertile. So they say in a similar way, if we have the attitude of pride, then when the rain of teachings, for example, we're attending teachings or there's teachings available, if we have an attitude of pride, it's like we're the peak of the mountain. The rain of teachings just hits our mind, but it doesn't stay. It just flows right off. But somebody who has humility, their mind is like the valley. It's like open. So the rain of Dharma, the rain of teachings comes in and it stays there, and then it nurtures the growth of good qualities, and so lots of good things will grow in a mind that is humble. Does that make sense? I just find that analogy really helpful. I'd rather have a mind like a fertile valley than a barren mountain peak. So if we can recognize that pride is an unhealthy, unskillful state of mind, and humility is a nicer, better state of mind, then when problems happen, we can remind ourselves, well, you know, I'm just an ordinary person, an ordinary being. I'm not enlightened. I haven't reached, you know, these higher states of mind. So it's inevitable that problems will happen to me. So it can help us to feel more humble. Because when things are going well, when you're, you know, successful in what you're doing and everything you try to do works well and you're not facing any difficulties or problems, when we're in that state of things, it's easy to slip into pride. Easy for our mind to get sort of puffed up with pride. Well, I'm so great, you know, and I'm, you know, good at this and good at that. And so our mind, we can get kind of puffed up. Having pride is like a puffed up mind. And then when things don't go well, when something goes wrong, some failure, some bad experience, somebody gives us a hard time or whatever, it's like our balloon gets deflated. Somebody puts a pin in our balloon and we get deflated. So rather than, of course we might get depressed about that, but that's not helpful. So rather than getting depressed, if we just remind ourselves, well, I'm in samsara, I'm not an enlightened being, I'm not perfect, so it's inevitable that these things will happen, and what I need to do is to work on myself, to get myself, you know, beyond my faults and my mistakes and reach enlightenment. So, does that make sense? Well, we have a little bit of time before the break, and I thought rather than just continue to give more and more information, let's do a little bit of reflection on these points that we've looked at so far and see how they might be helpful for us. So make yourselves comfortable. Try to have a straight back. Having a straight back helps your mind to be more focused, concentrated, clear. But at the same time, try to have a relaxed body, not tight, tense, so that your shoulders be relaxed. Let all the muscles in your body be relaxed, except the muscles that are needed to keep you in this position and keep you sitting upright. And if there are any thoughts in your mind that are not related to what we're doing here, put those aside. So if you're thinking about something that you need to do later or tomorrow, or you're thinking about something from the past that's not related to this subject, put those thoughts aside and make the determination to focus your mind on what we are doing right here, right now. And the breath is a useful tool for bringing our mind to the present, because our breath is right here, right now. So by watching the breath coming in and going out, it can stabilize our mind, ground our mind in the present. So now bring to mind a problem that is happening in your life, or you could think of a problem that happened to you recently. It might be better not to think of some really huge, enormous, complicated problem. That might be too much to take on. So think of something relatively small, like just being in a traffic jam or having to deal with some irritating person, or it could be something physical, some physical problem, sickness or pain or discomfort, something that your mind feels, I don't like this, I don't want this, I want it to go away. So we can use this problem to remind ourselves of or increase our feeling of renunciation. So this is based on the understanding that we are unenlightened beings, we are in samsara, cyclic existence, and it's just the nature of samsara that there are problems again and again and again. As long as we're in samsara, we can never be truly happy or free. So it's like being in prison. And the Buddha was once in samsara, but found a way out and explained how to get out. And that's really what his teachings are all about. How to get out of samsara, how to get out of suffering. But we have to want to get out. We have to have the wish to get out. So we have to see that samsara is difficult and unpleasant. So whenever we do face a problem, we can remind ourselves, well, this is the nature of samsara. And I need to get myself out of samsara if I want to stop experiencing problems. And therefore I need to follow the Buddha's teachings that explain how to get out of samsara. And just think about how this problem can help you to renew your sense of renunciation or the determination to be free. And we can also use problems to renew our attitude of refuge, which also comes from recognizing that we are in an imperfect situation. We have problems and difficulties, and we need help. We need help to free ourselves from this situation. And we come to see that the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, are able to give us the help that we need. But we have to turn to them rely upon them, ask for their help. That's the meaning of refuge. Saying, I want to take my guidance from the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I want to follow the Buddhist teachings to get myself out of suffering. And just think about how this problem can help you to renew, re-strengthen your attitude of refuge. And the third point we looked at was that problems can help to reduce our pride. So just think about these two states of mind, pride on the one hand and humility on the other. Which one do you think is better to have? So if you can see the faults of pride and the benefits of humility, then when problems happen to us, one of the benefits of problems is they help to reduce our pride, they help to humble us. So we realize we're not perfect, we're not as great as we might sometimes think. We still have faults, we make mistakes, we have a long way to go to work on ourselves and reach higher states like the state of the Buddha, enlightenment. So this is one good thing about problems. It helps to bring us down, help us be more down to earth, more humble. So let's take a break now for about 15 minutes.